We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's July 17th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yun, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Seong.
Good morning, yeah.
And Jessica Dainong.
Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Last week, a new social media app shook up the internet. It's a text-based app from the owners of Instagram. It's called Threads, where users can share text updates and join public conversations. In a single week, the app has amassed over 110 million signups. People are now curious as to how this app will further develop. A leaked internal document from the creators Meta found that the app might include the direct messaging feature. Moving on, last week, officials from the Labor Ministry and People Power Party demanded the country's unemployment benefit system be changed. That comes as 2,000 more people applied for these benefits last month compared to a year ago. And some unemployed people actually earn more money through these benefits than workers who are on the minimum wage. Here in Korea, unemployment benefits are given to those who quit their job or get laid off. They benefit by receiving 60% of their average paycheck of 3 months from their previous job. Staying with what has happened in Korea over the weekend, as torrential rain pounded the country, we've seen large-scale landslides and flooding. One underground tunnel in Cheongju City flooded, trapping dozens of people inside cars and buses passing through this area. Officials rescued 9 people and recovered 13 dead bodies as of this morning, and investigations are still underway. And of the 9 survivors who hung onto the sides of guardrails near the tunnel to survive, one told a local news outlet that water quickly came into the tunnel. The survivor commented how he couldn't understand why the tunnel wasn't closed off sooner, especially since the KMA and Ministry of Interior and Safety officials issued warnings to be aware of landslides and flooding. And South Korea is well aware that its summers are wet and is usually well prepared. But since last year, when we saw record-breaking rains and flooding, we've had a handful amount of people die. Compared to that, though, we've seen 3 times more people die this year. And once you heard this news, what was your first reaction?
I mean, it is just truly devastating just to hear it again as you reported. And I understand that the government is doing its best to alert the people. I get warning messages about it, and it is doing its best to close off some roads, but it still seems that there needs to be more enforcement on the law to make sure that these mishaps don't happen. I mean, we've heard about the mishaps that caused by people living in the subground 0 floors that drowned because they couldn't get there in time or because there wasn't infrastructure properly in place. Now, it seems that the rain is getting heavier each year, so I do hope that people move quickly to adopt to save these lives.
What about you, Xiong? How do you think we could have better prepared ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, my deepest condolences for the people who lost their lives due to the monsoon flooding this year. We've had the heaviest rain in 115 years last year, actually, which resulted to these ground floor flats from flooding as well. So every summer, South Korea do get heavy rain during its monsoon seasons, and as you mentioned, Jessica, text message alerts and things like that are always ringing our phones. Even the past few weeks, couple of weeks, I've used, even over the weekend, I had literally about 3 or 4 alerts every couple of hours.
Right.
Just talking about covering whole different regions of Korea. Be careful when you go here. The roads are going to be closed off here. But Osang in particular, I think there was sort of a miscalculation from the local authorities as well. I heard an interview on the way to the studio this morning of one of the, not the survivors, but one of the local residents who reported the flooding to the local authority, the local fire station, saying that why isn't the roads being closed off?
I know.
It should have been closed off an hours before to prevent this. But I think the sudden flooding of the Miho River also caused the unexpected rush.
Right.
And if it wasn't the river next to it flooding the tunnel directly, I think people would have realized and could have left the cars and just walked out. But it was within minutes.
It was within minutes. It was flash flooding. Thousands of tons of water just filled up the tunnel, and not a lot of people could think twice before leaving their cars. And that's why the Ministry of Safety and Interior said, if this ever happens to you, if you see flooding, just immediately go out of your car. Or in case that it's already been flooded, try breaking the windows of your cars and look for the corners of the window. That way you could easily break out. And that was our news feed for this Monday. Let's now move on to our discussion topic of the day. Today, June 17th is Constitution Day in Korea. In light of this day, we're going to look at what laws and legal systems our generation think need more work. Take a look at the screen to find out more. On July 17, 1948, the Republic of Korea enacted its constitution. Officials chose July 17th as Constitution Day because this was the day the Joseon dynasty was founded. Constitution Day is one of the 4 major national commemorative holidays as it promotes South Korea's drive to strengthen democracy and equal, just legislation. Today, NewsGen aims to see what this day means to people in our generation by asking 3 questions. 1. What are some laws or proposals people from our generation have been demanding? 2. What are some laws or policies that directly affect or interest young Koreans? 3. How proactive is our generation in protecting their legal rights? Today is Constitution Day in Korea, and we're going to be looking at how far South Korea has progressed in protecting people's legal rights. Before we do so, let's take a look at how the Constitution came to be and take a look at South Korea's legal journey over the years, Xiong.
Yeah, so Korea before the Japanese annexation in 1910 was ruled by the Great Joseon dynasty, which lasted over 500 years. There was no set constitution, although common laws existed. As mentioned in the VCR earlier, it was only in 1948, 3 years after Korea was liberated from Japan, that the first South Korean government enacted its constitution. However, before that, on the 11th of April 1919, there was a constitutional charter created by the Provisional Government of the Republic of Korea, a group of intelligent patriots that fearlessly led the country to liberation. Since 1948, there has been a total of 9 constitutional revisions, some for good and some for worse, including the revision by the military coup president Park Chung-hee in 1963. It's important to note that the Korean constitution is a living document that can be amended to reflect societal and political changes. The legal system of South Korea has evolved over the years to protect individual rights and ensure the separation of powers and also foster democratic governance.
That was a very detailed history of how our Constitution came to be. Cheska, would you like to add on to anything about what you think about South Korea's Constitution at the moment?
So the Constitution, the word literally itself constitutes the values that the country is founded upon, right? The values and the identity of the country itself. So if we take a look at the United States, the Constitution covers freedom, which is exactly what the people came to the United States in search for. Now, in terms of South Korea, when I read the Article 1 and 2 of the Constitution, it said the Republic of Korea is a democratic republic and the sovereignty lies with the people and all the power comes from the people. So by that statement alone, it's very clear that the Constitution supports and it is by the people. And one of the interesting things that I noticed when I was reading the Constitution, in Article 22 and 31, there's a clause about, the freedom and the right for education, which I personally thought it was interesting because it seems that our founding father knew the importance of education, which is what Korea is known for.
We're known for heated private education.
So I don't know if they knew about the extent.
They knew, even back then. Now, we're going to be focusing a bit more on the laws and policies that have affected or targeted people in our generation. So, Xiong, what are some laws that have caught your attention the most these days?
Yeah, one of the first ones that actually caught, I do care about the environment as well, and I always thought that the expiration date of food product was a little bit too soon.
Okay.
And starting from January 1st, 2023, this year, the expiration date indicated on food was changed to use-by date. A lot of European countries, like the UK, are doing that as well, which extended the deadline for consumption of foods. The Ministry of Food and Drug Safety expects that the introduction of the use-by date will reduce unnecessary waste of food. So until now, consumers and retailers have recognized the previous best before expiration date, which led to wasteful, premature disposal of food products. So I think this change could actually help people consume food for longer time, meaning there'll be less food waste.
Right. Cheska, I know you're also interested in the environment, but why don't you look at another angle and tell us some laws that caught your attention?
Just to add, I think my grandma would be very happy about this law because she's one of those who's like, it's okay, expiration date don't mean anything.
That's me as well. I'll be like, oh, no, don't throw it, I'll eat that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on top of that, as you mentioned, as an MZ, I'm very, very interested in the working conditions of our generation. Now, Now, since 2016, there have been multiple attempts to pass this law called no Kakao Talk or no messaging after working hours. Unfortunately, it hasn't been legislated yet, but it just goes to show how important working hour conditions are for MZs. I mean, we talked about quiet quitters, you know, working hour policies that have been
We
registered.
actually talked about the Kakao Talk thing on one of our shows before as well.
So it's something that our generation is very keen on and probably want to save their working hours just for themselves.
For sure, because we value work-life balance, as you mentioned. I think we even want to see laws that can protect our time after work.
Exactly.
And Xiao, I personally am very curious about what the laws are like for young adults or students with loans. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Right. I mean, according to the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs, more than 21% of householders aged between 19 and 39 have debt-to-income ratio that exceeds 300% as of 2021, meaning their level of debt was more than 3 times their income. The UN administration has been offering to write off debts for those aged 34 or younger since 2022 through a debt relief program called Credit Counseling and Recovery Service. But more recently, the National Assembly Board of Education passed the Student Loan Interest Relief Act, exempting interest rate to be paid on student loans for median income households or below. The legislation has to pass the National Assembly Legislation and Judiciary Committee to be enacted, so it might take a bit of time, but there is positive steps towards debt relief for at least student loans for the younger generation.
Right, and mentioning median income households, that's a family of 4 with a monthly income of around $8,000.
Oh yeah, it is.
Now lastly, as we mentioned in today's intro video, we're going to take a look at how proactive people in our generation are to protect and act upon their legal rights. In that sense, what type of changes or new laws would you like to see coming in our direction?
Oh, I think this is such an interesting discussion. I did a little research on our generation, and the rankings were they're very interested in social welfare and environment, and of course the work-life balance, as you talked about. But there was also a lot of sort of voices about actually enforcing or strengthening current laws and policies. Now, in lieu of that, I personally believe that there are some laws such as drunk driving or environmental laws that definitely needs to be strengthened. And also, as we discussed in one of the episodes, Yan, I personally would like to see more rehabilitation program for juvenile offenders particularly. I think the law is supposed to serve and protect, and I would like to see law that actually serves to protect the people in all kinds of circumstances.
Right, so you're okay with the laws at the moment, but you just want to see them strengthened, like in terms of penalties and the clauses there.
I mean, there are some laws that I would like to change, but if I had to pick one, I would like to see some of them strengthened.
You want to see them strengthened. What about you, Xiao?
That makes sense. I mean, for me, I would focus on a specific topic, specific area of law. I mean, Chanze fraud, the lease fraud has been a big case in South Korea, and South Korea has a total of around 1,000 housing rental or Chanze fraud cases reported until now that left about 3,000 victims nationwide suffering from about 460 billion won, which amounts to about $352 million in damages. Over half of the victims are either in their 20s or 30s, which cost them their life savings, causing 4 confirmed suicides as well. So very unfortunate. And Chanze lease fraud is ultimately due to information asymmetry, as there is a lack of information the tenants can know about the landlord. Many lawmakers are also discussing this, but I think creating a big database information system which allows licensed real estate agents access can also be one of the solutions to prevent this lease fraud.
Yeah, personally, I hope to see this type of legal breakthrough happen very, very soon.
Hopefully.
Now, we asked the same question to our viewers, and here's what 3 of them had to say. Take a look at the screen to find out what they had to say on today's discussion topic. Uncle Monkey said, why are South Korean courts so lenient on sexual predators and less protective of victims? Is anyone going to pass laws that address the issue and effectively punish the criminals caught? Jiawei Ki said, I'm paying attention to whether New Zealand has a capital gains tax because I don't want to have to pay tax if I sell a house. Benny D97 said Korea's age counting law. Koreans these days are now younger than their Korean age as it's been officially scrapped. I like that it was being discussed last year and that has now been passed as a law. Now, thank you to all our viewers who shared their insights and ideas on what laws they're interested in the most. We're now going to include a legal expert in our talks to find out how we can now better protect our legal rights. We're now going to include a legal expert in our talks. It's Kwon Hyuk-sung, a lawyer here in South Korea. Welcome, Mr. Kwon.
Hello, it's glad to be here again.
Good morning.
Hello.
All right, Hyuk-sung, I would like to ask you the first question. Could you tell us how quickly laws are passed here in Korea and what's the process is like?
It's difficult to say exactly how long it takes for a law to be passed because it depends on various factors like the complexity of the legislation and the political climate. Some laws can be passed quickly while others may take months or even years.
Right.
So to start the legislation process, there needs to be a social demand or consensus for a new law. And once there's a sufficient demand, a bill is proposed. It can be proposed by the members of the parliament, the government, or citizens through a petition system. After the proposal, the bill is assigned to a relevant committee in the national parliament. The committee carefully examines the bill's contents, the potential implications, and hold debates or hearings to gather opinions from experts and stakeholders. Then finally, the bill goes through a voting phase. It is put to a vote in the national parliament. It requires the approval of at least half of the participating Congress members. If the bill receives the majority vote, it is then sent to the president for approval. The president can either sign the bill into a law or veto it. So in case of a veto, the national parliament can override it with the 2/3 of the majority vote. If the president approves the bill, it is officially announced as the law.
Yeah, I mean, that is how the law gets passed in Korea. It is complicated, but I guess it's quite common in other democratic systems with bicameral system as well. So, I mean, I'd like to ask how South Korea's laws, especially for the younger generation, compared to other parts of the world. I mean, this could also be in education, in juvenile crimes, and things like that. Are there any sort of strength the Korean law system has over other countries?
Well, actually, the law exclusively for the young generation was passed into 2020 here in Korea. Before 2020, unlike some other countries, South Korea did not have any specific law exclusively for the young generation. While there were provisions in different laws ensuring the safety and rights of young people, they were fragmented and there was no comprehensive legislation for the youth.
I see.
However, issues such as high unemployment rate, house instability, and a declining birth rate among the young generation became significant social concerns these days here in Korea, highlighting the need for systematic and comprehensive support for the youth. So, as a response to these challenges, the Framework Act on Youth was passed in 2020. This law focuses solely on the youth generation and aims to establish the responsibilities of the national governments and local authorities for the youth development. Under this law, the government and local authorities are obligated to create specific policies and plans, like you just addressed in the formal interview, that dedicated to supporting the youth.
You know, I think it's interesting that you told us that there are some challenges that our generation needs to kind of overcome because there hasn't been enough provisions for our generation. So what are some things that we could possibly do to make sure that we, you know, our rights are protected in the future generation?
Okay, so besides the laws and establishments and policies of the government, in my opinion, the most important thing is our own participation and awareness. So, as I mentioned earlier, even small actions and participation from ordinary citizens can initiate new laws and systems. And also, it's crucial for us to understand and make use of existing laws and systems. For example, we can utilize relevant laws in our daily lives every day, like labor laws for our working conditions. So many people from the MZ generation are now graduating college and become part of the workforce. I hope not, but many of them may encounter some unfair or unlawful measures and accidents in our offices and workplaces every day. So in this situation, we should aware that we have certain rights from the ensured by the law by learning relevant laws and regulations. You don't have to be a lawyer, but still there are things that can be learned in a more casual way. By doing so, we can assert and start protecting our own legal rights.
That would be
Right.
beneficial.
Always keeping ourselves educated is key. Thank you so much, Hyuk-sung. It was a pleasure to hear from you today.
Thank you, Mr. Kwon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And based on our interview just now, what do you guys think we should keep in mind when looking for or proposing different laws? Very briefly, please.
He said to be educated and always be informed. I mean, I understand that law is a legacy, right? Meaning it's going to affect many, many generations to come. So I understand that it's difficult to always legislate something because you have to think in advance. However, I do hope that the laws do get amended to reflect many of the societal changes that are happening currently in our generation.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the key point here, participation of everyday citizens. You know, congressmen, politicians, they exist to represent what the citizens need to talk about our voice that needs to be heard and put it into legislation. So I think participation from everyday citizens like us, like everyday MZers, everybody is the key into making crucial changes in the constitution and law in general.
Right, and hopefully there's no big accident or incident that pushes this as a turning point. We could take preventatory measures and talk about it so that we could see better directions come through these laws. And all right, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Xiang
My pleasure.
and Cheska Daino.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.